Have you ever seen an image so unexpected that it seemed to freeze time and spark endless whispers at the same moment? Because that is exactly what happened when rare photos of Gina Lollobrigida surfaced, showing her in a daring G-string, surprising fans around the world and igniting conversations that still linger today. And staying with this story matters because the real impact of these images goes far beyond their surface. Gina Lollobrigida was not just another actress. She was one of the most recognizable faces of her era, admired internationally for her talent, striking beauty, and commanding presence on screen. At a time when cinema followed strict standards and studios carefully controlled how stars were seen, Gina stood out simply by being confident and self-assured, which made the reaction to these photos even stronger. Many people thought they knew exactly who she was, so seeing her portrayed in such a bold and unapologetic way challenged expectations and made audiences question long-held assumptions. The photos showed her standing comfortably, without shame or hesitation, projecting confidence rather than scandal, and for some fans this was shocking, while for others it felt honest and empowering, because the images were not just about revealing clothing, they were about choice, freedom, and ownership during a period when women were often told what was acceptable and what was not. Understanding the era these photos came from is essential because, at that time, actors had very little control over their public image. Studios dictated appearances, and society was quick to judge, meaning a single image could seriously damage a career, which is why these photos felt like a rule being broken and raised questions about whether they were intended for the public, whether they were art, and whether Gina had full control over their release. Rumors only added to the mystery, with some claiming the images were private or shared without clear consent, fueling even more discussion and fascination. Yet what truly defined this moment was Gina's response. She did not retreat or apologize. She continued living and working on her own terms, shifting the conversation away from clothing and toward autonomy and self-belief. Critics were divided, some labeling the photos inappropriate, others calling them brave, and fans were equally split. But one thing was certain: Gina was once again at the center of attention, reminding the world that she was more than a carefully crafted image. As years passed, perspectives changed, and newer generations began to see the photos not as scandal but as expression, recognizing how restrictive the old film industry was and how rare it was for a woman to assert control over her image. The story also opened deeper discussions about privacy, consent, and who truly owns an image once it exists, questions that remain relevant even today. Long before social media complicated these issues further, in the end these photos did not define Gina Lollobrigida. They became just one chapter in a rich and complex life, where she remained an artist, a star, and a figure impossible to ignore, revealing a fearless side that refused to fit neatly into expectations. So when looking back, these images should not be seen as simple shock material, but as a quiet challenge to outdated rules. A reminder that history is shaped not only by loud rebellion, but also by silent confidence. And if this story surprised you, it shows why. Moments like these still matter, because behind every famous face is a real person navigating pressure, judgment, and personal choice, making the story less about fashion and more about how society reacts when someone steps outside the lines, encouraging reflection before judgment, and explaining why these photos are remembered not for scandal, but for the conversation they started.